Their tent was found by the investigation team, but it was torn. Because its threads were sticking outwards, the tent's cloth had been torn from the inside. It seemed that the hikers inside, terrified, had fled after tearing the tent. Also seen were some footprints, impressions of shoes and bare feet imprinted in the snow. Also found were the hiker's camera and some strange photographs from it. But this case has remained unsolved for the past 65 years. Despite a full criminal investigation, photographs, and a register with entries made every day. This is the story of the Mountain of the Dead, and this incident is remembered as the Dyatlov Pass incident. Welcome back, viewers, to Amir TV Videos. On the morning of January 23, 1959, a team of 10 people set out towards the Ural Mountain range in Siberia after catching a train. This group had 8 boys and 2 girls, and their group leader was Igor Dyatlov. With them, they had kept a register in which every moment's news was being written. Group leader Igor Dyatlov made an entry in the register during the train journey. The translation of which is, "I am wondering what new thing is waiting for us on this journey. Is something new about to happen?" The group traveled by train, bus, truck, and horse for the next few days, finally continuing on foot and on their skis. One member, Yuri Yudin, decided to turn back after falling ill, while the remaining 9 hikers continued their journey. From the moment Yuri was separating from his 9 companions, these are the photos. But who knew that he would be seeing them for the last time today? Through the snowy valleys, the group of 9 continued their journey and began documenting every moment using cameras along with the diary. So far, the photos found and the entries in the register seemed completely normal. They reached the bottom of a mountain on February 1st, which the local people know by the name Mountain of the Dead. That mountain was climbed by them for the entire day, and they finally decided to set up camp a few meters from the summit. Recovered from their camera are these last few photos. And at the same time, the final entry made in the register. Its translation is, "It is difficult to even imagine such peace in the mountains with strong winds, hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements." Written in their register was everything that happened up to this point. But what happened after this, no one knows. A total of 16 days was supposed to be taken by this expedition. They had told their friends and family members that they would send news of their well-being by a telegraph after coming back down. Because 15 days had already passed since the 16-day mark, worry was growing for relatives and friends, but there was no news from group leader Dyatlov or any group member. Finally, a volunteer search party was formed, which managed to locate the missing hikers. Camp on the slope of the mountain on February 26th. That something had gone horribly wrong here wasn't hard to guess upon seeing the camp. A thin layer of snow covered the tent, and the hikers' belongings inside were lying in perfectly fine condition. But with the help of a knife, the tent's cloth had been cut from the inside, as if perhaps something went wrong inside the tent that forced them to run away after tearing it. The search for the hikers began in the surrounding area the next day. Heading down the mountain, some footprints were imprinted in the snow near the opening of the torn tent. Some marks of shoes and some of bare feet were among these footprints. That footprints are made almost identically when walking in a relaxed manner. Let me tell you here, and here too, marks of normal steps, not long, running strides, were found by the investigation team. For about 500 meters, the footprints were imprinted in the snow, but after that, they disappeared somewhere. Perhaps the snow that fell later had hidden them. In the direction of these footprints, the investigation team continued, and after a while reached a cedar tree. There, they found the frozen dead bodies of Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, and also signs of an extinguished bonfire. It took the next 2 months to find the bodies of all 9 hikers. Very few clothes were being worn by the first 2 hikers. There were no jackets, no pants, no gloves, hats, shoes, nor any such thing that is worn to protect from the cold in such freezing temperatures. They were only wearing light shirts and underpants. It was found when the weather archives were checked that the temperature here was about -30 degrees Celsius when they died. But their clothes were like those worn in the summer season. But why was this so? On the nearby cedar tree, some strange marks were also found. Broken up to 5 meters high were its branches, as if in the dark of night, someone had tried to climb it to save their lives. Also found buried in the snow between the tent and the cedar tree were the bodies of the next 3 hikers. In somewhat warmer clothes compared to the previous 2, these people were found, but they also were not wearing shoes or gloves. Towards the tent was the direction of these 3 hikers, as if they were going from the forest below up towards the tent, but lost courage midway and died. Found on their bodies were marks of some injuries, but the cause of death for all 5 was declared by doctors as hypothermia, the condition where the body loses all its heat due to staying in the cold for too long. From under a ravine in the forest, the bodies of the last 4 hikers were recovered. 75 meters in the opposite direction from the same cedar tree was their exact location. Serious injuries were had by 3 of them. A fractured skull was had by 1, and broken ribs by 2. The medical examiner's opinion was that such injuries could not be caused by an attack from a human or animal. That they had fallen from a height was their opinion. Because 2 of the victims had their eyes missing, and the girl's tongue was gone, the name of an animal attack was mentioned. The most surprising thing was that radioactive material was on 2 t-shirts and 1 pant found at the crime scene. That perhaps they were killed, that it was a murder, was the understanding with which the investigation was proceeding initially. But on May 28th, this criminal case was closed because there was no evidence to suggest that they were murdered or that they had killed each other. So, what exactly happened to these 9 people? What is the meaning of leaving the tent by tearing it open? What emergency was so grave that they had to cut the tent with a knife, and everyone had to get out? Because their footprints were not of people running away, whatever that emergency was, it ended as soon as they left the tent. That is, once they were outside, the danger that was inside the tent was gone, and they started walking relaxed. Due to hypothermia, 6 of the 9 hikers died, according to the official report. But it was hard to believe that they died from the cold, looking at their condition. International coverage had been received by this case by now. The hikers' family members and many people in America started raising their voices against the Soviet Union's hypothermia story. They believed that the real reason for the hikers' deaths was being covered up by the Soviet government. Everyone's thoughts turned towards nuclear testing, especially when radioactive particles were found on 3 items of clothing. The era of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and America was this, and just a few years earlier, America had shown a glimpse of its power by dropping nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Soviet Union also began conducting several nuclear tests after that. People thought that some nuclear test had been secretly conducted by the Soviet Union on this mountain, due to whose radiation the 9 hikers had died, and now they wanted to settle the case by citing hypothermia as the cause. From different angles, the investigation team was looking at this case. An avalanche was also blamed for the incident at one point. Perhaps they felt an avalanche during the night, and all ran away, leaving the tent. But the avalanche theory was hard to digest, because if an avalanche had come, a very thick layer would have been the thin layer of snow covering the tent. Secondly, an experienced hiker and skier was group leader Igor Dyatlov. He would never pitch a tent in a place where there is a risk of an avalanche. More than 100 expeditions took place after this incident, but no one noticed such conditions there that could cause an avalanche. However, dangerous conditions were indeed experienced on this mountain, but in the months of April and May, when the snow is melting, whereas these 9 hikers went in February, when no such conditions existed. Here is the very last photo taken from a hiker's camera, which was taken on the same night the incident happened. It looks like a photo of some light, as the camera lens couldn't focus properly in the dark. New theories began to emerge because of this photo. Some people believed it was an unidentified flying object, UFO, in the sky, or some meteorite that crashed near them. If that had happened, why wasn't the debris of a crashed object found, while dead bodies could be found from under the snow? The actual truth of this last photo also never came to light. So what is the actual truth of the Dyatlov Pass incident? Our real question remains the same. Why did they tear the tent from the inside? How did some hikers get serious injuries? And why were they wearing such thin clothes in such cold, even though they were all experienced hikers? We turn towards the tent, which is actually the first link in the chain, to know the truth. An exhaust pipe is seen coming out of the tent if you look at the photos from a night or two before. Made by group leader Dyatlov himself, with this exhaust pipe and the stove, heater inside. They had used this stove on the night of the incident because cooked food was also found inside the tent. It is possible that some burning embers remaining inside caused a fire to flare up again accidentally when the exhaust pipe was closed. The exhaust pipe was not attached when the tent was found, meaning if a fire had started, its smoke was accumulating inside instead of going out, causing the hikers inside to begin suffocating. This seems to be the only reason why they immediately tore the tent to get out, because they couldn't control the smoke. Evidence exists to prove this theory, because burn marks have also been found on the hikers' bodies and clothes, and blood had come out of the mouths of some. That one reason for coughing up blood is inhaling a large amount of unfiltered smoke. Let me tell you here. Looking for shelter, they started walking slowly after getting out. Without warm clothes, some hikers had left the tent. They knew of a shelter location beforehand, which is why they went down towards the trees. There, they started a bonfire, whose extinguished embers were also found by the investigation team near the cedar tree. A little deeper into the forest went the 4 hikers who were wearing more clothes to search for wood. A small avalanche was triggered on the ravine there, and they fell onto the rocks below. They suffered serious injuries due to the fall from the ravine. Their skulls fractured, ribs broke, and internal bleeding started in their chests. Near the cedar tree were present the 2 hikers who were wearing fewer clothes. While climbing back towards the tent, the remaining 3 hikers, exhausted, froze to death there. Meanwhile, the 2 hikers sitting with the bonfire also froze to death due to the extinguished fire. Let me tell you regarding the radioactive particles that everything is slightly radioactive. But more radioactive than normal were these clothes. At a nuclear facility worked one group member, Alexander Kolevatov, and at a top-secret Soviet nuclear production plant worked Georgy Krivonishenko. These 2 hikers belonged to the radioactive clothes found, whereas normal quantities of radioactive elements were found on everyone else's clothes. It's possible that when they were injured and fighting for their lives, wild animals attacked them, as for the hikers whose body parts were missing. Since this incident, 65 years have passed. Only Yuri Yudin had survived from the 10-member group who had left the expedition due to illness. He died a natural death on April 27, 2013, at the age of 76. Generously, I hope you will all like and share this Amir TV video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next fantastic video.